Yipee-Ki-Yay, Mr. Falcon.
So we're talking about a favorite genre of ours today that's been done to death a little bit. But that's not going to stop Hollywood from doing it to death more or whatever. Werewolf movies. We're talking about werewolf movies. Tom is here. Hello, Tom.
Hey, everybody.
Okay. Recently, in the last couple weeks, they dropped the news that they are making yet another Wolfman movie.
Yeah,
and I don't
they
mean
did.
not like a Wolfman as the genre Wolfman movie, but like apparently another remake of the original Universal, The Wolfman from 1941. They did this before. They did this before in 2010. Yeah, I guess that's 14 years. It's been a while. This isn't coming out till next year.
Well, there's also like that was a straight up remake, right? And it stunk.
It was supposed to be, yeah.
This is
same character names and everything else.
I think this is a reboot.
Yeah, okay. Like there isn't much out there about it, but there's a synopsis on IMDb that says a man must protect himself and his family when they are being stalked, terrorized, and haunted by a deadly werewolf at night during a full moon.
Yeah,
Pretty fucking generic.
not a lot there.
Not really giving anything away. That could be any werewolf movie. All we know is the protagonist is a dude, probably going to be named Larry.
He better be named Larry.
Just saying, he's most likely going to be named Larry. This is cool. I mean, the last one sucked. The one with Benicio Del Toro and Anthony Hopkins and Emily Blunt from 2010. I know, just saying that out loud, how did it suck, right? Well, we're going to get into that pretty good in this episode, but it makes sense. I mean, Universal's been just terrible with keeping their monster universe alive. They tried that dark universe thing a few years ago, man. Like they tried before that, they tried with Van Helsing and all that nonsense with Hugh Jackman. And then they tried this dark universe reboot, which the Wolfman wasn't going to be part of it, I don't think.
Well, yeah, remember they kicked it off with the one movie that didn't really need a remake because there was a whole successful string of mummy movies, right? The Brendan Fraser mummy, like if nothing else, they were fun. The first one's great. And then they kicked it off with the Tom Cruise mummy and everybody which nobody wanted.
Yeah, that's right. Because they had Russell Crowe playing Dr. Jekyll in that, and they were trying to set some shit up with that one. That's right. And I think Dracula Untold was supposed to be.
Was it really?
Yeah, I think he was going to be the Dracula of that fake MCU, that monster MCU. But they never got there. They never got there because that would have been the present day story. Because of course, like Dracula Untold is like an origin story because we needed that again.
They did.
I didn't hate.
They did make one that was good.
What's that? And
it's the same people that are making this Wolfman reboot, and it was The Invisible Man.
Yeah, that was a departure. That wasn't. They'd pretty much given up on the dark universe thing by then, and that was kind of a low budget. I don't know, a shot in the dark.
That movie's
if you
good.
will. Yeah, it's excellent. You saw it?
I watched it, yeah. Well, when I heard about that, it was the same people that are remaking The Wolfman, and it's I imagine it's going to have that same flavor where they're trying to take an old concept and bring it into the modern world. At least I hope that's what they're doing.
I loved what they did with Invisible Man.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Completely different way of telling that story, and you know what? They never made an Invisible Man movie that was actually scary. Hollow Man came kind of close, but it was just too ridiculous to be scary.
Yeah.
But this actually, they figured out what about the Invisible Man can be scary. And oh, shock, it's telling the story from the victim's point of view instead of the Invisible Man. I mean, H.G. Wells is a genius, but they kept trying to tell that same story over and over and over again. Do you remember the Chevy Chase one when we were kids?
Oh God, I do remember that, like very, very vaguely.
The exact name of it escapes me, but it was so cheesy. And of course, Kevin Bacon and Hollow Man. You know, they've tried over and over. There were comedies, you know, Invisible Teenagers and shit. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense because it was one of the earliest special effects that they could pull off on film.
That shit looked amazing.
The old Claude Rains one. Yeah.
It looked wonderful.
Yeah, it still looks good. And, you know, that was all with like hand painting off shit. And it was really primitive, but it worked. It worked. And of course, a lot of stuff on strings flying through the air and whatnot. But,
yeah, it's real hokey looking, but it works.
It can be. But, you know, at the time, it was an illusion. And I guess it worked for people. So, you know, they just kept getting better and better, doing the same iteration. But that one really turned it on its head. And it made the Invisible Man scary. And the dread in just the movie, it really does have an atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that restaurant scene, man. How about that?
Oh, that was gnarly. When you think, oh, she's finally going to get someone on her side. And then, oh.
I mean, truly surprise, you know, it's really hard for a movie to like really surprise me. Man, I did not see that coming.
Nope.
Not at all. Fuck.
That really got out of hand.
Look, you know, a few years later after that movie comes out, we're still talking about a scene that rocked us. So, hey, I hope they can do the same thing for the Wolfman because it deserves good treatment. It deserves some fresh ideas because I don't know what the hell they're going to come up with though, man, because the werewolf genre is it's been trod a lot more than the Invisible Man has. So
it has, but I think they got some smart writers that are, like you say, they took the story, flipped it on its head, and came up with a fresh perspective on an old story. So if they can do something similar for the Wolfman, you know, I think it'll be good. And I need this to be good, Dave. I need it to be good.
Yeah.
You know why?
Yeah. Why? Because you can't take any more disappointment, and you might, you know, swallow something dangerous.
I mean, there's that. That's always a possibility.
Oh,
but
okay. That's me. I'm sorry.
That's daily. But there was one rumor in the rumor mill that like I wanted more than anything else. Of all the monster movies they were going to make, they said I had heard that they greenlit a Creature from the Black Lagoon reboot with Scarlett Johansson as the girl that the Gill Man is after. And I heard that and I was like, yes, I need that in my life. Make that happen. And so maybe a good Wolfman will pave the way for ScarJo to take the plunge into the Black Lagoon.
All right, I'm down for that. I loved that movie when I was a kid.
Oh, it's my favorite one.
And Revenge of the Creature was pretty good too.
Yeah, that was good.
Second one wasn't terrible.
How about The Creature Walks Among Us?
The Creature Walks Among Us. They couldn't afford the original suit or all the like underwater photography.
They put a shirt on him.
Fuck it.
Give him
Just
clothes.
burn his gills off, put his shirt on, have him walk around like Frankenstein. How does he die? Drowns. I don't know. Fuck. The Gill Man drowns? Yeah, the Gill Man drowns. Fuck you, man. Just fuck you.
We need a new one.
Well, hey, I mean, it's the what century is it? The 21st century?
Yeah.
Something like that. Back in the 80s, the Gill Man in the Monster Squad looked pretty fucking cool.
He looked awesome.
And that was a long time ago. So they should be able to make something with practical effects that looks pretty fucking awesome. And that was something that was good about the Invisible Man too. It wasn't saturated with all kinds of CG and shit. So, you know, fingers crossed. We're gonna find out October 25th. It's supposed to come out this year. So Tom and I are gonna go. We're gonna go. We're gonna see it. We're gonna come back, and we're gonna record. Hopefully not a tirade of anger for an hour, but hopefully praise.
Yeah. And then we're going to see how it stacks up against the first two attempts to update not update, but remake the Wolfman story. Yeah, and see how it stacks up to the 2010 Wolfman and the lesser known but pretty cool 94 Wolf, starring Jack
Wolf.
Nicholson.
And Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
So let's get into that. We're going to get into that now, and we'll report back later on the new Wolfman. But for now, it's Benicio Del Toro versus Jack Nicholson in a fucking wolf cage match. Holy shit, that was pretty good.
Yeah, thanks.
That was pretty
I've been
good.
working on that.
Welcome back, everybody. Special, not Halloween horror movie edition. We're going to be talking about one of the more underrated werewolf movies in cinema history. And it's a movie TJ just saw for the first time. We're talking about Wolf from 1994. Had a hell of a cast. Jack Nicholson heading it up with Michelle Pfeiffer, James Spader. And we had Rick Baker doing the makeup and the werewolf effects. And he's pretty much the Hollywood expert on werewolves. He's done so much. And I've seen this movie. I saw this movie. I remember seeing it when it came out. I was extremely sick, and we rented it. And my mom made fried bologna, and that smell still makes me nauseous.
Fried bologna.
Yeah. I don't know why. She never made it. She just wanted fried bologna sandwiches. And I was so sick, and the house smelled like that for hours. And we watched this movie, and now I think about fried bologna every time I see this fucking movie. Hopefully you don't have some horrible association with it now.
Well, my association with it is dryer lint and fabric softener.
It's your laundry day movie.
This was a laundry movie, yeah.
Right. This was one I didn't convince him to watch. We had it set up ahead of time before we came up with the idea for the actual laundry list. So this is pre-list, but so what'd you think? Just real quick, right off the bat. I mean, it's a little dated, it's a little old, but you're a big fan of the original Wolfman, which is why I really wanted you to watch it.
Right.
So what'd you think?
Okay. First I'll say I liked it. I thought it was cool. It was interesting, especially what they chose to focus on. It was pretty cool seeing Jack Nicholson become more aware of all this stuff that he can do once he's been bitten and is starting to turn into the wolf, and it was a neat take on it. And that being said, it gets a little goofy in spots, but I appreciate the camp. It's at the end of the day, it's a monster movie. It's just, it's not really meant to be taken too seriously, but it was cool. I liked it, especially being a fan of the original. It was a neat take on it, and it kind of changed the rules a little bit about what all the lore behind, what everybody thinks they know about werewolves. Sure.
So I mean, if anyone doesn't know, it wasn't the first werewolf movie ever, but it might as well have been. It was The Wolfman from Universal Studios in 1941, starring Lon Chaney Jr. and Claude Rains. It's a horror classic now. It's one of the big, I don't know, what is it, big four, big five Universal monsters.
About 5.
And it was remade directly once when the original Wolfman is 2 words, Wolfman, like Spider-Man, without a hyphen though. And then they made it all one word and made another movie in 2010 with Benicio Del Toro and Anthony Hopkins, and it wasn't great.
Not good. Not a good movie.
No, man. I mean, and I have I have feelings about that, and this is where this whole idea comes from. My opinion is that at this date, that Wolf, the Jack Nicholson movie, is a better remake of the original Wolfman than the 2010 Wolfman.
Sure.
In spirit, like in the spirit of the film, and just as a film, as a movie overall. I think it's better, and it's more. I don't. The story of the original Wolfman is run it down real quick. Larry Lawrence Talbot is this young man. I'd say, what is he? I mean, it's so hard to tell people's age in the movies from
back
the
then.
40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like he's in his 40s to me, and he always did, but he's probably like 22, 23. He's the son of a British lord, I guess, a leftover lord who owns a giant estate in the upon the moors, and the small village of, what is it? I think it's Llanwilly. Isn't that what it's called?
I have no idea what it's called. I totally forget.
They sing about it in that other one, and it's awful earworm crap. But he comes back home to England after spending years in America and going to school there, and he's all modern, and this is right at the dawn of the 20th century, and high time of inventions, and all kinds of old world shit getting put behind, and the new modern world taking its place. And he gets he's just an average everyman, right? He's supposed to be super relatable, and he gets thrust into a supernatural situation when he had no prior belief in the supernatural. And that's a lot of what we get in Wolf, I think. It's strange in that it's would you say it's like a werewolf movie for adults? Like, it's a very not horror genre-y werewolf movie, right?
Yeah. I mean, they don't lean too much into the gore or like the fantastic situation. It's very character driven in a way that I think the original isn't. You don't really get to know much about Larry Talbot other than that he likes to, peep through the window with a high powered telescope. Other than that, and he's kind of like a sex pest. He's like, he asked the lady,
pest.
yeah, go out with me 19 times, and no means yes. That's kind of all the character development you get, but they really delve a lot into Jack Nicholson's character. I think, what's his name? Will Randall.
Will Randall, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you get a complete picture of what this guy is. What makes him tick, and you get to, he's your vehicle for telling the story in a way that they kind of don't do in the original. And so that, I think it makes it, have a bigger appeal to like an adult audience as opposed to a kid who just wants to see the man turn into a wolf.
Sure. And the original, too, it should be said, is like, I think it's just over an hour long. It's a short.
Oh, it's real short.
Yeah, even for horror movies of the day, it was short. But it packed a lot into it, and it was one of the most popular and one of the most successful at the box office for Universal as well. And it was one of the later ones that they made. I mean, Dracula was made in the 30s, and so Frankenstein and Bride followed right after it. Yeah, and
the Mummy
Karloff's
was in the 30s.
Mummy, exactly, and Wolfman was kind of the last horror movie before World War II, like the last marquee horror movie, and then the universe was kind of set. The Creature from the Black Lagoon was later, That
was the 50s, 1954, I think.
Yeah. Yep. And that was, in the midst of the atomic age and all that. And, he gets lumped in with the rest of them sometimes and sometimes doesn't. But it's a weird outlier amongst those very slow, plodding, universal black and white horror movies. And Wolf has a very deliberate pace too. Like, this isn't Underworld. Like, werewolf movies have gotten so weird, and that's another thing to talk about too. Like, why is it so hard for Hollywood to make a good werewolf movie? Like, I think Wolf is a really good werewolf movie. I think American Werewolf in London is probably the best werewolf movie. You can argue it, whatever. And like the original Wolfman. And I mean, you're talking about decades, almost 100 years, we're going on here of movies why are there so few when there have been so few good werewolf films when there so many have been made?
I think I think a lot of them get wrapped up in the idea that it's a werewolf movie, right? They're trying that winds up being the focus. They're very upfront about the fact that it's a werewolf movie and we're going to see werewolves and there's a man that's going to change into a wolf and tear people to pieces. And you know, that's where I think they go off the rails. And then until you get one that's, you know, a little more character driven, has some more downtime and, you know, set up and they set some ground rules and some suspense. And I think that's what makes it work. It's not just you know, a bloodbath, and it's not like a 2-hour, you know, who can do the best transformation. You know, and if you watch this one, like that becomes like a hallmark of the werewolf movie is you watch the guy change, and they do very little of that in both the original and, you know, this one and in Wolf. And now you have to put an asterisk. The American Werewolf in London, that is famous for its transformation, you know, but I don't think they did it like the one time really well, and then you kind of didn't see it again.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but that was that film's hallmark.
Oh,
like
yeah.
That's what it did. You know, it's Rick Baker did that film as well, and he set out to do the best werewolf transformation on camera with practical effects way before CGI that he could do, and he did it. And he tried to top himself later. You know, he did Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah, the Thriller video, that was him.
Yep. And that transformation scene, like that was more like a cat monster.
Well, they had seen American Werewolf in London, and they're like, just get that guy. Like
it was John Landis.
Yeah, just
John
get
Landis
that guy.
directed both. Yeah, he did American Werewolf and he did Thriller. And then did you know that Baker also did Ozzy's werewolf makeup for Bark at the Moon, the music video? Yeah, I looked him up. I couldn't believe it. I had no idea. But I mean, he's done so many, and he's talked about in interviews how much he loved the original Wolfman and how it was one of the reasons he got into makeup. But he's done so many iterations of a werewolf in his career. He did that awful Christina Ricci werewolf movie from the 90s, Cursed.
I never saw that one.
That's really weird, interesting story behind that, dude. Like, it's another... Universal has tried to revive, revamp, and repackage its classic monsters so many times over the decades, and it just keeps failing. And that was their effort in the 90s, was Cursed, and it was supposed to be a Scream-esque take on the classic monsters, and it was supposed to be like the first entry, and it was supposed to be about the Wolfman. Like, there's even the Wolfman's cane. Like, there's this scene with this jerk off from Dawson's Creek. He's the love interest, and he owns like a nightclub or some
James
shit.
Vanderbeek?
No, the other one.
Josh Jackson?
Sure. I don't know, man. I
The
didn't
other
watch
one.
it. I just know the fucking face. And like he's got all this horror movie memorabilia, and Larry Talbot's cane is like in a case and everything. And like they were really trying to do it. And like there's like weird lore about that production. Like they filmed half of it with Skeet Ulrich, and then he left the movie or got fired or something, and they had to do all these reshoots, and then Wes Craven kind of threw up his hands, and then the studio brought someone else in, and it was a fucking disaster. Like, I think Jesse Eisenberg is in it when he's real young, and the length of his hair changes back and forth from scene to scene because they had to do so many reshoots and changes. So that was a failure. They tried to bring him back with Van Helsing, the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing.
Oh, I saw
Remember that?
Yeah.
That packaged, that was supposed to be, another kickoff of a new Universal horror universe, and it was terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
And then they tried yet again with the Benicio Del Toro one in 2010, which was supposed to be the first entry later they decided it was going to be the first entry in the Universal Dark Universe, or whatever the fuck they were calling it. They were trying to Marvelize the Universal monsters.
Which is a good idea in theory.
I mean,
if done well.
But I mean, they didn't even do it that well the first time around.
No.
I mean, that's what they did after the Wolfman. The Wolfman was the last original horror character until the creature from the Black Lagoon in the 50s.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, and after the Wolfman, though, they started doing team-ups. It was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and then it was the Ghost of Frankenstein, and then House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein. And all they were team-ups, and they kept losing actors here and there, but Lon Chaney just stayed. And he played the Wolfman like 20 fucking times.
Yeah.
They got different people to play Dracula. They got different guys to play
they got Bela Lugosi to be Frankenstein in one of them.
I was just going to say that poor bastard.
That's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Yeah. The story behind that is awful and heartbreaking for Bela Lugosi. They cut all of his dialogue. Like, he had lines, and if you watch those movies in chronological order, Frankenstein's monster is blinded in I think it's Ghost of Frankenstein comes before that, and he's blind in that one at the end. And Bela Lugosi plays the whole movie as if he's blind.
Is that why he's squinting the whole time?
Yes, he's supposed to be blind. And he had dialogue that explained it, because by then the monster had learned how to talk in the Universal movies.
Dude, I've seen that movie
cut it all.
Bunch. And like I noticed that he's like squinting his eyes, and then he just goes and like points at stuff.
Yep. That's why.
Oh, that's interesting.
They cut all his dialogue and made him sound like just a mute weirdo. And that's why he's so weird in that. And then they got Glenn Strange by the end. And then the last one they ever did was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein,
which is awesome.
Which was and it was like a reunion movie of all the classic monsters, played mostly by the actors that made them famous. They got Lugosi back to be Dracula. They got Glenn Strange to be Frankenstein, and he was the dude playing Frankenstein by the end. And Lon Chaney Jr. to be the Wolfman. I think that was the last time he did it. And it's one of the better transformations they ever did back then. That was the 50s by then, I think, or at least the late 40s.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Excuse me. So where were we here? We were talking about
why it's hard to make a good werewolf movie.
Yeah, we were talking about Rick Baker and the makeup and the werewolf effects. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right, man. Movies about werewolves a lot of times get caught up in the either the creature or the transformation, right? And
right.
Man, the Wolfman, the 2010 one, was such a missed opportunity. I keep watching that movie over and over. Every so often I'll watch it and just wonder what exactly is wrong with it. And go ahead.
You got more patience than I do, because I saw that once and I was like, I'm never watching this again. I hated that movie.
I hated it too. I saw it in the theater.
Bad.
And I had been looking forward to it for a long time.
Yeah, man, me too.
And I kept reading about how Del Toro was like a huge fan of the original and all this. And all right, at the end of the day, I think he was just fucking miscast.
Oh, right. I agree with that 100%. I love Benicio Del Toro, right?
Yeah,
but
me too, man.
He's great. He's in some of my favorite stuff. But he was absolutely just wrong for that role. He's really good at like brooding and just being intense, and that on paper it seems like that might be what you want, but you're trying to play this character where like you have one part be you want to relate to the human being that eventually turns into the animal, and his human being bit is so like just dark and quiet and brooding that like you never get to relate to the guy, and it falls flat. The whole thing falls flat.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think brooding and dark for the entirety of the film is the right way to go for Larry Talbot at all. And that's not how Lon Chaney played him in the original with the little bit of time they gave him.
No, he was
it
a
was
big
about the
goofball.
transformation. Yeah, and it's another transformation. It was about him having to take life so seriously all of a sudden because he's in this bizarre situation, and you see Larry change as a person. And Del Toro's Talbot doesn't change. I mean, he's the same. You needed an actor who could take you on a roller coaster for that one, and he's just real one note through the whole thing. And then on the other end, Anthony Hopkins is so just chewing up scenery all over the fucking place, and he's fantastic because he's always fantastic.
Oh, he's great. He's great.
But again, his performance doesn't fit in that movie. It's like he was in a different film from everyone else, and
it's a mess.
It's a fucking mess in so many different ways. And the worst sin, I mean, you could forgive a lot, but the worst sin was that they had Rick Baker. They had him redo the Wolfman from scratch. And I think that the werewolf in that movie is really good. I think he made it scary while still paying tribute to the original design, if you call it that. But the transformation scenes, man. Oh my God. Do you remember them?
Wait, which transformation scenes are we talking about?
In the Del Toro ones.
Okay, yeah. It was all CGI.
My God.
They just the one of the cool things about a werewolf movie is they cut the good ones got famous and were good because of what they did with the practical effects. It was one of the reasons you watch one. It's like you said, it's one of the tropes. But it's a trope for a reason because it's cool. And they threw all that out the window, and it's so much of it is computer generated. It just looks I mean, in a still frame it might look good, but it just, like I said, it feels fake.
And the lure behind the production was that Baker was ready to go with practical effect transformation scenes. Like he had prepared them because, I mean, again, he was going to see if he could one-up himself from American Werewolf, 20 years later with new tech that was available and everything. And the movie started running over budget, and the studio decided, no, we're going to do CG because it's faster and we can do it. And on top of it, one of the most prominent transformation scene in that movie is all CG in about the brightest lighting you could imagine. It's in an operating theater.
Oh,
like
that's
an old-timey operating theater. Yeah, in full bright
table.
light. Oh, he's strapped in like an old-fashioned wheelchair. And I cannot even describe. It's so bad. It's like you're watching a cartoon for a minute, and then all of a sudden, there's Rick Baker's makeup design on screen. Like, it's such a joke that you can't even pretend. Like, you can't suspend your disbelief enough to take it seriously. And what the fuck? Why did they even bother? Like, why did they spend millions of dollars making a period piece set in the 1890s in London, in the British countryside, all this shit. They had an old-timey train. Like, how much did the CG cost for that fucking train, right? And you're going to go and not do the most amazing werewolf transformation put on film to date. You're just going to do like something that looks like it came out of an Underworld movie, but worse. I went back and watched the original Underworld. That movie handled the werewolf transformations better.
Yeah,
in the early
I think they
aughts.
did too. Yeah, it's such a missed opportunity. It's kind of like it's the same problem that The Thing had. The Thing movie. They were ready to go with all these practical effects. And then they said,
the remake. You mean the remake prequel one, right?
The prequel, yeah. And they said, let's just use the computers. And then it changes the whole feel of the movie, and it all just feels wrong. And it's such a shame that they just didn't go with what has worked before and has looked great. It boggles my mind.
And there's a couple things that just they still don't have right in CG, and one is tentacles. They can never seem to get that to look right and real, which is the tentacles in that Thing prequel were terrible.
You know what's funny? It's funny you say that. Like I watched something about CGI, and one of the best examples of it looking really good in a movie is one of the first times it was used in a big movie, and it was Davy Jones from the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And there are some
those
people
movies nailed it.
they would argue that like that is the best looking CGI character you'll ever see. And it would happen so early in the technology that it makes you wonder why it hasn't gotten any better. And I would argue that it's only gotten worse. How did they get it so right in that first go, and they haven't been able to do it that well since? It doesn't make sense. But yeah, it's speaking of tentacles, those looked really, really good. And then every other time they go to do it, they botch it. It does. I don't know. I don't get it.
The Mist was another one where the tentacles looked really, really fake. And the Frank Darabont originally wanted to do that movie in black and white, and they made him do it in color. But you could get the Blu-ray version, and they had the black and white cut on there, and it looks a lot better. But the other thing that CG can't seem to do right is fur, is hair. Like
Hair. Well, hair's hard to render.
It's terribly
a lot of
difficult.
information.
And not only that, but like you're talking about different textures of hair, wet and bloody hair, and none of it looked right in the Wolfman. None of it. And Wolf is on all the way on the other end of the spectrum. The werewolf effects through most of the movie are so subdued and subtle. And you never really see a transformation as such.
No, it's all suggested.
And not to spoil it for anyone, but I mean, spoilers. You should have seen it. It's like 30 years old. Even though Tom didn't, but whatever.
That's why I have you, Dave.
So the gist of this film is that Will Randall is bitten by a wolf, and
Right in the beginning of the movie.
Right in the very beginning. Starts at that's where we start. There's no mystery about who bites him or who the werewolf is or any of that crap. This is a character journey, and he's like a middle-aged New York book editor. Now he edits novels for a big publishing house, and he's kind of on the downslope of his career. You feel like he's gotten kind of sedentary. He doesn't have the fire up his ass he used to have when he was young. And the publishing house just got taken over by this billionaire dude who's coming in and cleaning house. And he finds out he's getting laid off or he's going to be forced to, go to Eastern Europe or something.
Yeah, Europe.
What does he say? I think the line he says, the choice between a no job and a job that nobody would want.
Yeah, that's it.
And Nicholson is so, he can be super bombastic and big when he wants to be. And in the beginning of this movie, he's so mild-mannered and just blah, right?
Well,
and
you described the opening of the movie as subdued and subtle. That's a good way to describe everything about it. Jack Nicholson is very subdued and subtle, and it works because I've seen him go off the rails in stuff like as the Joker and as Jack Torrance in the Shining. He's like unhinged, and you think they would lean into that for a monster movie, but he doesn't. It's really dialed back, and it works really well. I really like this character.
And instead of being like one of these werewolf movies where he's bitten and then he waits for the next full moon and then transforms, this is more of a gradual transformation where throughout a month, every night, he's a little bit more of a werewolf. And his human persona gets a little bit more aggressive, and he actually gets a little younger. If you actually notice, they fill in. He's pretty. His hair is really thinning at the beginning, right? And as the movie progresses, they add hair to his head, and he even jokes about it at one point. He looks in the mirror and imitates the old Hair Club for Men commercial.
I'm not
right?
just the president of the Hair Club for Men. I'm also a client.
Fucking Jack, man. I miss seeing him in movies, but he fucking destroyed this role. And Michelle Pfeiffer's fantastic. She's like a cherry on top. She's this tough ass, like, seen everything, been around the world, billionaire's daughter. I don't know where you get that character from, but she's doesn't get along with her father, but lives in his guest house.
She's kind of the analog for Larry Talbot. If you think about it, the guy Christopher Plummer plays Alden, the guy
who bought the publishing house,
who's buying the publishing house. Yeah, it's like a billionaire hostile takeover, and he's got that big house, that manor, which looks a lot like Talbot Manor from the original Wolfman. And then, like, if you watch that movie, you have Lord Talbot and his like wayward son Larry, who comes home. And it's kind of the same thing that happens. You have like Alden, who's, it's kind of the closest thing to a lord you could find is a modern day billionaire with like all that, with all that power and the all
original
that property.
Wolfman. The 1941 Wolfman starts, and Larry's brother is already dead.
Yeah, and that she's the stand-in for Larry Talbot.
Yes, her brother in this movie also is already dead. She talks about him. He either committed suicide or OD'd.
I think it was a suicide. She said
he had drug problems too, right?
As schizophrenic.
Right. And she talks about being in and out of mental places with him all the time and all that. But he's dead before the movie starts. Wow, man! I never noticed that. Nice,
fresh eyes, baby.
Yeah, fresh eyes, beautiful. That's outstanding. That's outstanding. And yeah, by the end, it looks like she's headed the same way.
Yeah, no, spoiler alert. Yeah.
Yeah, spoiler alert. But also, you know what else this movie did? Which is hilarious considering it's the most subdued movie with no real transformation scene. I think this is the first movie where you get two werewolves fighting.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I looked back and I couldn't find anything else. In the old Werewolf of London from the 30s, you could kind of make an argument the two werewolves fight in that, but only one of them is in wolf mode. The other one took an antidote and didn't turn into a werewolf and gets killed. It was a really stupid move. But
why would you do
I
that?
think, and I mean, pretty much every werewolf movie now, there's always more than one, and they always end up fighting. And it's awful usually. Even in the Wolfman remake, there's a werewolf fight. The Del Toro one.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
It's not good.
And again, CG in that scene, the head. Remember the head rolling? Oh, my God. It was so fucking bad. It was so bad. But, yeah, like you said, Wolf is more about, and that's why I think it's better because, like most stories, it's about the characters and not the gimmick. You know
what my favorite part of that movie was? Like the most entertaining bit, and it's a werewolf movie. You're expecting to see that. You're just waiting for that. But while you're waiting for that, you see the fall of Will Randall. And they really make a good point of just dragging him through the ringer. He's losing his job, and James Spader plays his protege, who winds up being his rival, who not only steals his job but is also sleeping with his wife. I mean, talk about backstabbing somebody. And man, oh God, he is such a turd in that movie, James Spader. Oh, he's so.
This is the first thing I ever saw him in too.
They make you hate him so bad, and he's so slimy. He's just tell when Jack Nicholson's character finds out that he stole his job and his wife. He's like, tell me what you want me to do. If you say resign today, I'll resign today. And he goes, you should resign today. And he's like,
well, I can't do that.
I can't do that. I don't know why I said it, because I'm not going to do it. And like, what's this guy's problem? But those were the most interesting bits. And it wasn't the wolf stuff. Like, yeah, maybe he could hear really well and he can smell, and that like he's using all those things to his advantage to try to get a better situation at work. But at no point was he a wolfman running around biting people's necks off. And that was the coolest part of the movie, was watching him just like kick ass with this new skill set he had, all these like sort of super extrasensory powers.
Yeah, and it's not like he used it's like super hearing to listen in on phone conversations and find out secrets. I mean, they that's a little cherry that they put on, you know, that when that great scene where he's in the publishing house and he's focusing on all the different sounds, right? But it's his aggression. It's the changes in his personality that the wolf is giving him that allows him to get back at Spader.
He becomes the alpha.
Yeah, essentially. He gets his balls back, right? Like, he gets his fucking balls back, and he outmaneuvers Spader. And, like, it's not, you don't get the feeling that this is something that attached itself to him. You get the feeling that this is something being brought out of him, you know, that was always part of him. He just had to tap into it, you know?
Well, the expert that he goes to says it.
The doctor.
He says, like, a wolf demon isn't evil. If it bites an evil man, it brings that evil out. But if it bites a good man, you know, it'll make a good man better.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. It's a really different take on the whole idea. And, I mean, people should know that the werewolf that most people think of was a Hollywood invention. I mean, it was invented for the Lon Chaney movie. You know, the rules, you know, only changing on a full moon, the silver bullet thing, you know, all that stuff was an invention of Hollywood. And the original Wolfman, there is no silver bullet. There is no silver. He's killed with a silver cane
with the silver handle. They mention the silver bullet, but nobody just has those. You know,
right.
You see people make them in other movies, but the one guy, he's flat out says, you know, when they go to shoot the Wolfman, he's like, oh yeah, don't you know you need a silver bullet to kill a werewolf? And like, who has that?
And again, all invented. Silver werewolves had nothing to do with each other. I mean, silver generally, there's a lot of it in old folklore about it having protective powers. I mean, you find some vampire stories where silver wards off vampires. And why is that? Because it was the precious metal that most average people could possibly, you know, afford, and would have like a cross maybe of silver, you know, or a pendant. And that's what you had. And it was your special, you know, religious token, you know, or whatever. And that's probably where that came from. But I mean, the old werewolf legends don't have any of these rules. There's nothing about a full moon. You know, there's nothing about, it's more like what you see in Wolf. It's more about the properties taking on the characteristics of an animal. You know, if you're looking at like shape-shifting legends and things like that. And, you know, in other legends, you know, werewolfery is like a curse. Like it's a straight up curse put on someone or earned by someone through bad actions and immorality. So, you know, people have this idea that there's this traditional werewolf legend and that you have to kind of touch it with every story that you do, or you're, you know, blaspheming or something. And there just isn't, you know, there just isn't. And it's been deviated from so much that, you know, you might as well just come up with your own rules.
And they kind of do that in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's another reason why it stands out and why it's so good, you know? But you said that there were a couple of things that just made you laugh. What was too camp for you in this one?
I'll preface this, like, I liked it. I really did like it. However, when he first transforms, when Jack Nicholson's character first transforms at Michelle Pfeiffer's like guest house. Like first of all, he's not feeling well. He's like, oh, something came over me, and he's told her at this point that he's been bitten by a wolf, and then he changes, and the change is real subtle. And the thing that made me laugh is like they just kind of put like bottom teeth in. He had like a bottom denture in that was making his jaw jut out like real far. And then he just goes running through the woods in his baggy ass 90s corduroy pants and like leaping through the air when he like slow motion leaps through the window. It was just such an abrupt change from all the, because up to that point this movie was very subtle and subdued and like low key, and I was like, this is working. I like this. And then all of a sudden he's like leaping through the forest in slow motion, and it was a little ridiculous. And then when he's like leaping through Central Park, and he gets accosted by some like young thugs, and then he talks to them. He's like, I got $1,000 in my wallet. Yeah. Well, how much money do you want to borrow? $5, $10. And then I'm like, okay, he talks. At that point, he's more, and he had like crazy sideburns. It's more like Jekyll and Hyde. That's what it reminded me of. It was
a bit more.
It was like Jekyll and Hyde, but I remember just every time that he would like leap 30 feet in the air. And then when David Schwimmer shows up as like a New York beat cop in the middle of the night at the Central Park Zoo, and he's walking around the zoo with his bottom teeth jutting out, and he's like freaking the animals out. And then David Schwimmer's like, "All right, hands behind your back." He's trying to talk tough like a cop, and it's like, "Well, no, you're Ross from Friends. You can't be tough." And
this was pre-Friends, I'm pretty sure.
He leaps like 40 feet in the air to get away from him, and I started howling. I was laughing so hard. But that being said, I like the movie. It just has a few bits that are a little ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll take a weird springboard jump from middle-aged stuntman over like seeing him in CG running on all fours or something.
Yeah, of course.
Know?
Me too.
But no, there are some goofy moments. You know, for the record, the bottom teeth thing, I'm pretty sure that's just an homage to the original Wolfman makeup.
It was very similar. I'll give it that.
Yeah, I think that's what Baker was going for with that, but it does look a little... I mean, yeah, and like that's what I meant. Like, werewolf effects are very subtle. I mean, the first night that he's Wolfie, when he discovers that his wife is sleeping with Spader, he doesn't even have any physical changes really when he goes out that night.
No, but he
just
bounds
acting.
up the steps.
Yes, he does. He bounds up the steps. He does bound up the steps, and that is kind of funny. And I think most of it is Nicholson's physique as a, like 60-year-old man at this time or whatever he was. And yeah, man, those fucking 90s pants. But you know what? It kind of reminds me of Larry Talbot at the same time.
Yeah, I get it. It does. Everyone, he had those super high-waisted pants. I mean, you remember? I remember looking at those
with the
pants.
shirt tucked in.
Yeah, and it
always
looks like
shirt tucked in.
If he was gonna like, this is a weird thought. Tom, just preface this, very strange. But I'm like, how long's the zipper on those pants? When you go to like unzip, it's unzip like 12 inches of pants. That's how high they were. They're like up to his navel. But
they were super about pants.
It does look a lot like the original, and now I'm wondering if that was just totally intentional. And
but that is how that's how white people dressed at the time too. You know, like his wardrobe with the blue shirt and the tan pants, like that was like the uniform of middle-aged white dudes, you know, everywhere who weren't wearing power suits, you know. So it's kind of a time capsule in that way, I guess. But
and I
the
do
final
have a question.
fight is, go ahead. In
the very beginning, when he's driving on that snowy road, he can't see. He hits that wolf that runs in the road, and he goes up to it, and he's like poking it with the stick to see if it's dead, And while he's looking away, you see the wolf's eye open and look at him and then close. So did it intentionally run in front of the car to let him hit it? Because it looks like this thing is very, very conscious of what it's doing. And it just put itself in that position so it could bite somebody. Like, is that what's happening? Do you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think either that's a cool way to think about it, or getting hit was an accident, but the wolf recognized something in Will and decided to bite him. It decided to play possum after waking up and decided to bite him because it could have killed him, right? Like he was completely alone, all by himself.
It bit him and ran off. So
yeah, and then you see more eyes in the trees, so he wasn't even alone either.
Oh, there's a bunch of them, yeah.
Yeah, they totally could have killed him. So I think it decided. Maybe after smelling him, maybe after he got near it. I kind of like that. But yeah, there could be that argument that it was sort of a fate-driven thing. That it jumped in front of the car and got hit on purpose. Yeah, maybe. That's neat. Yeah, there are a couple scenes that are just goofy. You're right. Not enough to take you out of it, I don't think, completely.
No.
But, yeah.
No.
The jumps are a little goofy, but the final fight I thought was pretty good.
It was.
I always laugh at Spader at the very end with the hedge clippers jumping through the air.
That was another moment where I'm like in the middle of folding clothes and I see him. He's got his neck and his chin down, like all the way down in his chest, and he's just leaping through the air. And then, oh man, it does look pretty ridiculous.
It does that other thing that 90s movies did a lot, where the character actually shoots someone like twice, but they show it from 4 angles, so it seems like they shot them 6 times. And they
she didn't shoot him 6 times?
No, man. Like if you rewind it, it's like maximum 2 squibs went off, and you just see the same bullet hits from 3 different cameras as he slow motion through the air.
I thought she just emptied a gun on him.
No, but then the landing, like the stuntman, whoever did that landing on the cement was fantastic. So it's so weird that like they really should have rethought some. I bet you they did these jumps or something, and then they just didn't look right in normal speed, and they had to slow them down or something. I don't know. You're right though. That's a weird thing about this fucking movie. It looked off.
It's definitely like wire work, which
you think.
Yeah, it looks like
guess.
it. I mean, how else would you have done it?
I don't know. Like those springboard
computer.
No,
effects.
Those springboards that stuntmen use, they just literally are springboards. They hop on them, they shoot them up in the air, and they land on a bag.
If you're going to springboard like across a distance, yeah, sure. But when you're leaping straight up 30 feet to land on top of a rock, like you can't. That'd be dangerous as hell with a springboard. Like it's got to be some kind of
wire work. It had to be. It was early. It was pre-Matrix, so. It was early wire work.
They've been doing that in kung fu movies for decades.
Well, this ain't no kung fu movie.
No, I mean.
So
again, it took.
I have to ask.
I liked it.
I'm sorry.
I liked it. I want to keep saying that. I did like this movie, despite the fact that like when
it's not perfect.
Occasionally something would happen. I'm like, what just happened?
No, when this movie came out, much was made about Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer and their age difference, and a lot of jokes about the Joker hooking up with Catwoman. But did that seem weird to you, seeing it in 2023 for the first time?
No, because like the two of them, I guess like if you take out the equation, you take out of the equation how old the actors are, and you just look at the characters, and both of them are very like world weary, inexperienced, and they're kind of like kindred spirits in a way. And so it doesn't seem all that unnatural or out of place for those two to to get together. They're a match, and I think it works. I mean, at no point I did wonder, like, I wonder how old Michelle Pfeiffer is in this movie, because he's clearly like 60 something, but or at the very least he's in his 50s. Like, I don't know. I think it works. It's because it's pretty character driven, and you're not. I didn't question those two characters getting together, in the way that somebody might question, like, those two actors are a certain number of years apart.
Okay. I've seen this movie a few times over the years, and man, I'll tell you, it hits different when you're in your 20s versus your 40s. Watching it as I got older, I got a lot more out of it, and I could really relate to Will in ways I couldn't when I was younger. And when I was younger, he seemed so much older than Michelle Pfeiffer. Like, Michelle Pfeiffer, I don't know why, I guess because she was in the Batman movies, and like she just seemed young and everyone was all into her. So, it seemed weird then, but yeah, now, yeah, it's not glaring at all. It doesn't seem off or anything. It seems more off that Spader would be banging Will's wife, but I assume that was just intentionally malicious, and he must have seduced her with his Spader-ness.
Slimy turd that guy is in this movie.
I have to confess something. I don't know if you know this, but when we do these podcasts, I usually have the movie we're talking about on the TV in the background.
Oh, do you have it on right now?
Yeah, and I just saw the scene in the bathroom where Will pisses on his shoes.
That was great.
When Will Randall finally gets his comeuppance and gets asshole Spader fired and gets his job back, he tells him about it in the men's room, and he marks his territory by just subtly turning toward him and just pissing. And there's like a piss cam. There's like one shot from the piss cam.
Yeah, they have a
stream.
Cam.
Yeah, you see a stream of piss coming from the bottom of the frame, and just going all over his shoes. I think he's wearing like suede hush puppies. It's so fucking 90s. And yeah, what does he say? He's like, real nice, Will. Suede shoes. And Will goes, asparagus.
Yeah, before that he goes, I was marking my territory. You just got in the way.
And then right after that, he finds that dude's fingers in his pocket.
Yeah, that's pretty gnarly.
Freaked out. That's another thing, too, that's really interesting about him as a character, Will Randall, is that morally, he doesn't transform in that way. Like, he's all the way to the end, he's horrified by what's happening to him. He tries to do the right thing at every turn. Like he handcuffs himself to the radiator after he finds those fingers in his pocket because it's proof he hurt someone when he was being all wolfy out in Central Park the night before, right?
Yeah.
He wears that medallion that the doctor gives him to suppress the transformation.
He's trying to beat it.
He's trying to beat it, and I mean, and he's going with it when it's helping him out, right? When it's helping him get his life back in order. But when he realizes that he hurt someone, he immediately is like, no, fuck this. It's not worth it. And that makes him a moral man. It makes him a moral character. And I think that was a really interesting thing to do. He's the good guy all the way through, and then Spader just becomes more and more. And it goes back to what you said about what the doctor said about the nature of what a werewolf is in this movie's world, and that it enhances the characteristics of a given person. And Spader just becomes a bigger piece of shit.
Yeah, he goes from
he gets
a turd to like a mega turd.
Yeah, a murderous turd too.
Yeah.
And you know what? The makeup they did on him at the end, it's kind of scary. And also, again, a werewolf driving a Range Rover is kind of goofy.
Yeah. I mean,
the driving scenes are weird. Like they're goofy.
You know what? I thought though.
What?
In the same way that you mentioned that, like, his baggy, high-waisted pants are a nod to the original. The driving scene, especially the one in the beginning, reminded me of the original. Where because that's how they used to film stuff. They'd have someone in a car with a fake background flashing by in the background, and they're in the front just subtly moving the wheel,
Yeah.
for no reason in particular. They're just jostling the wheel back and forth because I'm driving a manual steering car down a road, and they're trying to sell it. That's what all the driving scenes look like to me, especially the one in the snow. And I thought that looks really fake, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, it looks exactly like the opening scene when Larry Talbot is driving into the manor to see his dad.
And that is a fake ass driving scene.
Oh, it's terrible.
The old Wolfman. It's like a matte painting is just being carried back and forth across. It's bad.
But that's what
there's
the
a lot of
ones
things
in this movie remind me of. So
Yeah,
I wonder if it's a nod.
Well, in if you think about it in the context of when it came out in '94, this was kind of an old-fashioned movie in a lot of ways. Very character-driven, the pacing, and I think that's why it didn't do very well at the box office. I remember it was marketed obviously as a werewolf movie with Michelle Pfeiffer in it, and they tried to make it all sexy and there's no way you saw the trailers and the marketing for this and went in thinking you were going to see what you saw. And I think early audiences were ultimately disappointed, and it just didn't do that well. And it's a diamond in the rough. It really is. I mean, it's a kind of a lost movie. A lot of people don't remember, and it's a shame.
Diamond in the rough.
Yeah, diamond in the rough, like Aladdin or whatever. But I think it's one of the best werewolf movies ever made. And it's one of those movies that's you don't have to be ashamed to be into it. It's not a genre movie. They tried a lot of different things, and I think a lot of it worked. And what a cast, man. What a hell of a cast.
That was a good cast. Christopher Plummer.
That dude.
I like him a lot. He's usually in some kind of low-key role. He's not usually a leading man, but whatever he's in, he plays it really well.
Speaking of Christopher Plummer and horror classic remakes, he was in the cinematic milestone Dracula 2000 as Abraham von Helsing.
He's Van Helsing in that?
Yeah.
I saw that movie. Why don't I remember him?
I don't know, but he was the aging Van Helsing, and his protege was the dude from Hackers.
Johnny Lee Miller.
Yes, Johnny Lee Miller.
God, I love Hackers.
You know what? I watched that movie around Halloween for the first time in a serious number of years.
Which one?
Dracula 2000.
Okay.
And you know what? I give him credit. It's very made for, teenagers of the time, but they tried some new shit with a very, very well-trodden story. It's hard to do new shit with Dracula, and they really did try, and I think they did okay. That's not Dracula 2000, despite its horrific title, is not as terrible as you might think. So, it's worth a fun Halloween watch.
I saw that when it came out. And I'm pretty sure I hated it. So I
remember seeing it in the theater, and I remember liking the hell out of it, and especially because there's some really attractive women, and we were horny teenagers.
Yep.
So that was nice. It has that rapist dude from that '70s show, which is problematic.
Oh, that guy, Danny Masterson.
Masterson, yeah, he's got he's not in it very long. He gets killed pretty early, but he has a really cool jacket.
Maybe
he has a really cool leather jacket.
Yeah, if he gets killed, maybe we can watch it as long as we celebrate when it happens.
So, all right, this last thing about this whole Wolfman remake business. It's been 13 years now, 14 coming up since the Benicio Del Toro remake. first question, do you think this story needs another retelling? Do you think it should be left well enough alone, or do you think there's life for the Larry Talbot version of the Wolfman story?
I think that it could be done again, and it should be done as long as somebody does it well. Because as much as I'm a fan of the original, it's not the best movie.
No.
It's got a
Like
lot
you said,
of
it's
weird stuff.
lacking a lot of things. Yeah, and it's got some quirks of the day that are weird.
But everybody accepts them because there are other parts of it that are awesome and like started a genre. And I think that there's a way to perfect that movie. I think you could make a really good Larry Talbot retelling of that movie, and like make him less of a goofball that spies on women through the window with his giant telescope. And I think they tried to do that with, like, they don't do that with Benicio Del Toro, but also like with that movie. Excuse me, I watched it earlier. And what's the French term? Denouement, when like all this stuff has happened and you have like this resolution. You have none of that in the Wolfman. Literally, he goes out into the woods and they're hunting him, and he attacks the girl, and his father happens upon him with the cane with the silver handle. He beats him to death, and then like slowly he transforms back into Larry Talbot right in front of his father's eyes. And then he's like, "Oh no!" And they go, "Oh, he must have gotten killed by the Wolfman." Credits, and then that's it. Like, you don't get that wrap up, with that, like, okay, well, here's where we are when life continues after all the stuff has happened. It's like literally the final thing happens. Larry gets killed. Boom, credits, and the movie's done.
Yeah, it's super abrupt. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just think that there's a better movie waiting in that story to be made, and just no one's made it yet. They botched
who that guy is? You know who that guy is? The dude who says, "Oh, Larry must have been killed by the Wolfman." Right?
No, who is that?
That's Ralph Bellamy. He was one of the Duke and Duke brothers, the Duke and Duke brother who isn't Don Amici in Trading Places.
Oh,
the two old rich guys.
Yeah,
that's him. That's him when he was a young, tall man.
God,
a lot of those old
horror
movies. Yeah, a lot of those old horror movies had early roles for big actors. Clint Eastwood's first role was actually in Revenge of the Creature, the second creature from the Black Lagoon movie. He's a lab tech with mice.
Does he get killed by the creature?
No, he has like 2 lines. It's very unremarkable. Anyway, okay, so a Wolfman remake is worthwhile if it's done well, and it should be a lot of what they did right with Wolf, but better and less dated.
Yeah,
and maybe a little less subtle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I liked the subtlety in the beginning with the character arc. I really like that part, But I again, I think if they can, because the way that people make movies now has come so far, I think they really could nail some of the stuff that, maybe I don't want to say fell flat, but some of the stuff that made me chuckle at Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
If it was just like a better execution. And I understand, like, they were just working with what they had at the time. And, when you view it through that lens, it was great. It was a cool movie. I really enjoyed it. But I think there's more life in it. You could do that movie again and really nail it. And I don't know why they haven't. It's right there.
What's your favorite werewolf movie?
My
Hands
favorite.
down.
I mean, and this is pure nostalgia. My favorite, it's the original.
Okay.
I love it. Because it sets all the ground rules, and it it sets the tone for everything that comes after. And there are other ones that I like. I really like An American Werewolf in London. That one's great. And there was another one I really liked. It's not a great movie, but I saw it when I first saw it. I loved it. I think we watched it together. It was Dog Soldiers. Remember Dog Soldiers?
Oh, hell yeah, dude. We watched the shit out of that when we were in our early 20s.
Yeah, it was cool, man. And I
That was
think
a great...
that was one that leaned into the idea that, like, this is a werewolf movie. You're going to see werewolves, and they're going to werewolf people to death. And, in that way, it delivered. And those were really good-looking werewolves. They looked terrifying.
It was definitely scary for the time.
Oh, yeah. The
I didn't think werewolves
transformations
could be scary.
They
anymore.
looked really creepy. And one thing that they did was they really just leaned into showing them and how creepy they were. But, like, the transformation wasn't that... They weren't going to do it better than Rick Baker, so they just didn't. It was like a lot of it happened off screen, and then the next thing you know, there's this like towering 9-foot tall werewolf that's like ready to claw you to death.
That was the crazy thing, is they were so tall, they were so gangly without seeming like weak.
And they were bald, like mostly bald, except for like the head and the hands.
Right. You mean the bodies? Yeah, they had like
they
a
were
mane.
Scary looking.
Yeah, they have like a wolf's mane, but they weren't super shaggy. So I mean, it ended up having like a Wendigo kind of look to them instead of like a dude in a fursuit, which is what a lot of werewolf suits end up looking like. And they really did the lighting well on them. Like they never showed too much. And they had guys in stilts. That's how they had them so tall. The stuntmen or the performers who were playing the werewolves were wearing, stilts that were extremely uncomfortable, apparently. But it gave them this crazy gait when they walked. And, definitely eerie. And, I mean, that movie's whole gimmick was, all right, this is going to be a movie about soldiers fighting werewolves. And that is what they fucking gave you. And it's in a cabin in the woods setup. Most of it takes place in a cabin in the woods, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I mean, it's not highbrow anything at all, but it's really it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And another great, I think, is it's a shame that the special effects are so bad, and that the werewolf itself is so bad. But Silver Bullet. The Stephen King novella adaptation with Corey Haim from the 80s. Excellent adaptation of Cycle of the Werewolf, which is a very, very short story, oddly enough, from King. And I don't know, it has a special spot for me. I mean, it's not a great film. The special effects, like I said, are very bad, and the werewolf looks kind of more like a Jersey black bear than a werewolf. But there are moments that are creepy. And when you saw it as a kid, like you said, nostalgia, like pure nostalgia. I like that movie a lot. But yeah, my favorite is American Werewolf in London. And the worst werewolf movie in history is An American Werewolf in Paris.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I've seen a lot of bad movies. I've seen a lot of bad werewolves, and that movie is so fucking unwatchable. Jesus Christ. The money spent and